reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky defends signing a controversial bill that critics say weakens anti-corruption agencies, calling it necessary to strengthen the war effort. The law sparked the first major protest in Ukraine since Russia's invasion. Turkey and the United Kingdom sign a preliminary agreement allowing Ankara to operate Eurofighter Typhoon jets after Germany approved the delivery of 40 aircraft, a move aimed at strengthening Turkey's defences amid growing regional tensions. China welcomes India's decision to resume tourist visas for its nationals from the 24th of July for the first time in 5 years, as both nations move to repair strained ties. The world's top court is set to issue a landmark ruling on the country's legal duty to fight climate change and whether big polluters must pay for the damage in a verdict that could shape the future global climate action. And South Korea registers a record surge in birth rate growth during the first 5 months of this year, as the country pours in multi-billion-dollar incentives to stabilize its shrinking population. Hello and welcome. Let's begin with the tensions brewing in the Horn of Africa, at the center of which is Africa's largest dam, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the GERD. Now, here are the parties in the conflict. On one hand, it's Ethiopia, the upstream country who built the dam to boost its electricity output and regional influence. And the opposing party is Egypt, the downstream country which sees the dam as an existential threat. Sudan also echoes Egypt's sentiments, fearing reduced water flows. However, the credit for fueling tensions in the region goes to US President Donald Trump. For the third time in a month, Trump has claimed that the US funded the Ethiopian dam. Two similar claims made by the US President earlier this month were shot down by the Ethiopian government as untrue. Earlier this month, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced the completion of the dam. The project was launched in 2011 with a $4 billion budget. The dam is due to be inaugurated in September. While the dam is the centerpiece of Ethiopia's development agenda, the move has angered other Nile countries, especially Egypt. Despite the Ethiopian Prime Minister's promise that the dam is a shared opportunity, Cairo is not convinced. And in this conflict, Egypt has Trump's backing. Last month, in a post on Truth Social, Trump said the US stupidly funded the Ethiopian dam. Trump has backed Egypt's concerns that the dam will substantially reduce water flowing into the Nile. In 2020, Trump even said that Egypt might even blow up the dam. But why is the US president siding with Egypt in this dispute? The US president is not the one to help others for free, and Egypt is no exception. One of the reasons for Trump's support for Egypt stems from the war raging in Gaza, Trump wants Egypt to support Washington's close ally Israel. How? Trump wants Egypt to back Israel's plan to confine millions of Palestinians in a concentration camp close to the Rafah border in southern Gaza. But Egypt is not eager to follow his demands. Egypt has rejected Israel's plans to establish a so-called humanitarian city on the ruins of Rafah. Cairo sees Israel's plan as a step toward forcing the Palestinians across the border into Egypt. This also means that Israel would step up its security presence in a zone between the two countries, where such a deployment would be a violation of the 1979 peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. Cairo has also long sought U.S. intervention in the dispute over the dam. It wants the U.S. to pressurize Ethiopia into backing down on its plans to limit the flow of the Blue Nile. It remains to be seen what price will Cairo have to pay to keep Trump's support. And for more on this, we are being joined by Mr. Zemedine Negatu, who is a geopolitical commentator, live from Addis Ababa. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, President Trump has claimed multiple times that the U.S. funded the Renaissance Dam, despite Ethiopia insisting it was financed domestically through crowdfunding and state support. What do you make of these conflicting narratives, and is there any verifiable evidence of U.S. financial involvement in the dam's construction?
First of all, as always, Alison, thank you for having me back on your program. As you indicated in your introduction, the dam is obviously not only very important for Ethiopia, for the whole of East Africa, all the way up to North Africa. It is, of course, headline news in Washington and in many parts of the world. And the answer to your question is, as the United States funded the dam, let me backtrack for a second. A few weeks ago, when I first heard President Trump mentioned in a social media posting that the United States funded the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, my initial reaction, and I tweeted about it, was that he must have been misinformed by his staff, who may have provided him erroneous information, because it was obvious. I mean, I remember back when the dam was looking for financing, something like several years ago, Ethiopia had actually gone around the world, to the World Bank, to all the European institutions, to US institutions, seeking financing, because it is a very large financing package, over $5 billion. And I remember very vividly that, including the World Bank, they turned down Ethiopia's request. In fact, from what I remember, many of these institutions were saying, why do you need a dam that produces 5,000 or 6,000 megawatts? They said, Ethiopia, you only need maybe 1,000 or 1,200 megawatts. So every single institution that Ethiopia, and this is on the record, Ethiopia had approached, turned it down. They refused, including DFIs like the World Bank, whose primary responsibility is to invest in development projects. So there is no evidence that the United States has funded the dam. In fact, the dam was funded 100% by Ethiopian government and Ethiopians, including a large number of the Ethiopian diaspora community, contributed to the dam, which is now completed and will be set for inauguration very soon. So there is no evidence. So I'm not really sure why President Trump was informed, and I would like to believe he was misinformed by his staff, who are supposed to provide him factual information, because this is very easily verifiable as far as we can tell, that there is no American funding for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
Yes.
The United States has been a very long development partner of Ethiopia for decades, but many other things. But definitely, as far as I know, there is no evidence that the United States has put in any kind of financing to fund the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
Right. Right. And considering the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam's highly symbolic value to Ethiopia and its position as a sovereign development project, how might Trump's repeated claims affect U.S.-Ethiopia relations, particularly at a time when the dam is completed and nearing inauguration, and regional tensions with Egypt and Sudan are ongoing.
Right. I mean, this is a strategic development project. As I said, not only for Ethiopia, for the whole of Africa. Millions of Africans live in darkness today. Millions across East Africa, all the way up to parts of North Africa. So I think the way President Trump and the US administration and others should look at it is, this is an uplifting project. Yes, it's Ethiopians are extremely proud that they've been able to deliver as a country, as people, such a magnificent project, producing something like 5,000, 6,000 megawatts, the largest hydroelectric power dam in Africa and amongst the 10 largest. Imagine an emerging economy delivering on such a huge project. Normally, we're used to seeing these kinds of things in China, or even in the early days in the United States when the US was building very large dams. So I think the US, I'm sure President Trump, who's very excited about development and state of aid, I am sure when he sees the real facts, and when he in fact, you know what, it would be nice for him to actually come and visit the dam itself. And I think he'll be very impressed. So I think that's how we should look at it. Yes, it has a geopolitical angle because the Egyptians are concerned. And the other thing also I want to add here, in his statement the other day, I think he was speaking at some dinner in the US, he mentioned that the dam hinders the flow of the water. Well, again, I am 100% certain his advisors didn't provide any factual information. It's very easy to verify and present to the president that the dam is a hydroelectric power dam. It's not an irrigation dam. The water is not curtailed. It just flows through the turbines and just flows back into the river and goes all the way up to Egypt. So there is, even technically, I think he was misinformed. Again, experts who are supposed to inform him about these kinds of things. So again, this is something that easily verifiable, and I don't think the president should have any concern about the water being curtailed to Egypt. Now, the final point I want to make is Egypt and Ethiopia have been negotiating about this thing for a very long time. And Ethiopia, from I know for a fact, had offered Egypt a lot of opportunities to show them that this is not going to affect Egyptian life. I mean, I was involved in some of the discussions, for example, and I know the Egyptians were clearly provided evidence that not a liter, not a gallon of water will be curtailed from what they're receiving today. So I don't know, the media in Egypt probably, again, is not providing the right information, but this is a development project that everyone in the world, including the United States, should be proud of.
Right. Thank you very much. As always, great to have you on the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Alison.
Now, for our next story, we turn to Africa's biggest oil producer, Nigeria, where the continent's largest refinery is rapidly redefining global oil trade, not just in West Africa, but across markets in Europe, the United States, and West Asia. In a historic shift, the United States became a net exporter of crude to Nigeria in early 2024 for the first time ever. New data showed that in February and March last year, the US exported more crude oil to Nigeria than it imported. US crude exports to Nigeria were 111,000 barrels per day in February and 169,000 barrels per day in March. While the US crude imports from Nigeria, just over 54,000 barrels in February and 72,000 barrels per day in March. The shift was driven by two factors: a slowdown in US demand due to the refinery maintenance issues, and a surge in crude requirements from Nigeria's newly operational Dangote refinery. But before we tell you why this trade reversal is important, let's look at what the Dangote refinery really is. Now, it's a $20 billion mega project by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote. It is located in the Lekki Free Zone near Lagos. The operation started just last year. It has a 650,000 barrels per day capacity. The refinery is the largest in Africa and one of the largest single train refineries in the world. Now, Nigeria has long been a crude oil exporter, but had to import most of its refined fuels due to limited domestic capacity. The Dangote refinery aims to change that, supplying the local market and cutting dependence on foreign fuel. This to kickstart operations, it required massive amounts of crude, including from the US. As per reports, this has led to the trade reversal, a temporary but symbolic shift that reflects Nigeria's bigger vision. But the Dangote refinery is not just looking inward, it's also taking Nigerian fuel global simultaneously. And this year, it has already reached a major milestone, exporting up to 1 million tons of petrol. Now, the plant has shipped thousands of metric tons of gasoline to Asia and sent 2 consignments of jet fuel to Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil firm. It also delivered nearly 1.7 million barrels of jet fuel to US ports through 6 vessels. Now, this growth is starting to disrupt old market chains. In January, OPEC warned that Dangote's rise was beginning to shake Europe's fuel export business to Africa, a trade long valued at $17 billion per year. Now the experts believe that this long-standing supply route could soon come to an end. As of April this year, Dangote's refinery has more capacity than the 10 largest refineries in Europe combined. So a nation long dependent on fuel imports is now challenging global supply chains. And as the Dangote refinery expands its reach, Nigeria isn't just refining oil, it's redefining the rules of the global energy market. And shifting focus to southern Africa, where Mozambique is strengthening its defense ties with Russia. Mozambique's Foreign Minister, Maria Manuela Lucas, was in Moscow on Tuesday, and she met with her Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, and both leaders marked 50 years of friendship and cooperation between the two countries, and praised their growing defense partnership. Russia's foreign minister said that Moscow is committed to supporting Mozambique's internal security, particularly against terror threats in the region. He also announced plans to visit Mozambique soon.
We have confirmed our readiness to consider all requests from our friends in Mozambique on issues related to the need to strengthen their defense capability, strengthen their potential in the anti-terrorist sphere. Unfortunately, such threats in Mozambique and in other African countries in general remain.
Lucas, on her part, voiced concerns over the ongoing war in Ukraine. However, she praised the resilience of the Russian people. She also highlighted the war's impact on African food security. She said Mozambique hopes the conflict is resolved peacefully as the third round of talks continues in Istanbul.
We have been following closely this situation that is not pleasant, the conflict with Ukraine. We have seen that Russia is a country that is resilient, its people are resilient. We would like very much for this matter to be resolved in a peaceful way. Minister Sergei has informed us of the several rounds of negotiations, and we wanted, how do we say it, for its success, to try for the next round to be successful.
Russia and Mozambique have been deepening military cooperation for years. In 2019, Mozambique reportedly hired Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group to fight an ISIS-linked insurgency in the gas-rich Cabo Delgado province, a conflict that has left thousands dead and over 1 million displaced. However, as per reports, the Wagner mission was short-lived and faced setbacks, but it marked the start of deeper defense ties. A 2020 German intelligence report also claimed that Russia was planning to build a military base in Mozambique, though this remains unconfirmed. This meeting comes as Russia, under President Vladimir Putin, expands its footprint across Africa, especially in the Sahel region, where it is backing the junta-led governments battling Islamist insurgencies. Russian fighters have replaced Western troops deployed for counter-terrorism operations. As Western influence shrinks in parts of Africa, Russia continues to deepen defense and diplomatic ties, with Mozambique now the latest front in Moscow's strategic push. And for our last story, let's turn our attention to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a shaft collapse at a gold mine in the eastern part of the conflict-hit nation has trapped miners underground. The incident occurred at the Lomera artisanal gold mine. This is in South Kivu's Luhihi region in the early hours of Sunday amid heavy rain. Survivors described the structure shaking before giving way, forcing some miners to flee through alternate shafts.
It was Saturday night. I was working in the shaft when it started to shake. There were many of us, because these shafts are drilled in several places. It was raining from all sides, including from above. Around 1 o'clock, the shaft collapsed. Those who were at the top shouted. We went down through a central opening to another shaft, and that's how we got out. There were 4 of us. We thank the Lord.
There is no clarity on the death toll and the number of miners trapped underground, and rescue efforts are underway. Local sources estimate dozens may have been underground when the shaft collapsed. People are reportedly using their bare hands and basic tools to save those trapped underground.
We were working in the shaft. My friends had been in the shaft since Saturday night. On Sunday morning, we learned that the shaft had collapsed. We tried to find them, but they never returned to where we sleep. Since there were 3 of them, until now, we don't know if we'll see them again.
The site has been sealed off as safety inspections continue, and mining operations are suspended until Thursday. Artisanal mining is a significant source of income in eastern DRC, but accidents such as these continue to endanger lives. What makes it worse is lax safety measures and a lack of proper equipment. In a similar incident last month, a collapse at a coltan mine in eastern DRC's North Kivu province killed at least 12 people. In another such incident in April, at least 10 people were killed in a gold mine collapse in eastern Congo. But both the North and South Kivu provinces have been under control of the M23 rebels since they captured swathes of the DRC's mineral-rich east earlier this year. Now, reacting to the latest shaft collapse incident at Lomera, the M23 has rejected reports that hundreds were trapped underground. Lomera has witnessed a gold rush since the end of last year. Following this, thousands of people arrived, hoping to make money, turning the area into a chaotic mess of mine shafts and makeshift shelters. Now, these facilities aren't safe and are prone to collapse. Dozens of mining sites across this region of DRC supply the global electronics industry with vital metals and minerals. And many of them are not properly regulated, and safety standards are not observed, the result of which are such tragic incidents. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.